Hello, everyone, and welcome to the High Noon Hot Seat brought to you by High Noon Podcast. I'm your host, Blevins. With me, as always, is Deathblow. What's up, buddy?
Not too much. How's it going?
It's going super well. And joining us today, we are honored to have none other than the commissioner of the Overwatch League, Nate Nanzer. Hello, sir. Welcome.
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being on. This has been a long time coming, or a long time waiting for us, and working with Kiki. Huge shout outs to her, and huge shout outs to you for coming on the show. So let's just.
I don't know how you feel about being underneath a wanted sign, Nate, but it's giving me goosebumps right now. This is great to have you. Thank you so much.
No, it's good to be here. My podcast consumption since moving to Orange County, I lived in LA for a long time, and man, I could consume a lot of podcasts when I lived in LA. But now my commute is like 14 minutes, so I have to listen to podcasts over the course of several days. But I try my best to keep up with everything.
Gotcha. Well, it's humbling to think you might have heard an episode, let alone listen with any regularity whatsoever. So thank you for that.
Yes, but let's just jump right into it. We're going to start you off just like we start off all of our interviews and get to know you a little bit more. So, Nate, what is your gaming and esports origin story?
Good question. So, I've been a gamer, I guess, my whole life. I would say really started playing games with the Nintendo Entertainment System was kind of I played probably more baseball stars than most people on Earth. Played a lot of Nintendo. Was really into really every game, but played a lot of sports. I was a baseball player growing up. I played a lot of baseball. So baseball stars, Ken Griffey Jr. baseball, all of those were my favorites. Really got into I would say my favorite shooter ever. It really got me in playing a lot of shooters on the PC was Battlefield 2. Played a ton of Battlefield 2. It's an awesome game. Like esports was a thing. So I've only worked at Blizzard for 3 years, but I've worked in and around the games industry for almost 15 years. Was a consultant. So I did a lot of consumer insights, and I did a lot of marketing strategy, development strategy stuff for a bunch of different game companies over the course of my career. And esports was a thing that I had always followed. I had a friend of mine who was a famous CS 1.6 player. Used to watch that back in the day, and always sort of followed esports. And one of the things that had always occurred to me while following esports was that it was actually super hard to be a fan of esports. You actually have to work super hard at it to keep up with everything. So when I got to Blizzard, I actually started here on the marketing team. And was focused on building out the sort of research and consumer insights function, consumer strategy function here at Blizzard, and started to work on esports, trying to figure out things like, which of our gamers follows esports, how closely they follow it, where do they watch, like all of the sorts of things that you'd want to figure out when you're putting together, an esports strategy. And really saw an opportunity there to sort of do something a little bit different than we had done in the past, because we had this new game coming out called Overwatch. And, it being the first new IP at Blizzard in 17 years, it was like a great opportunity to sort of do something different around esports from the beginning of the game's life cycle, from very early on. So sort of, I guess, got to work in esports because I just started to work in esports, and made it happen. And I think that tends to be the advice I give people. I get asked a lot, like, how do I get a job in esports? What should I do? And my answer is usually like, well, if you're not already doing something, you're really far behind. You should just be whatever it is. Like, even if you write a blog that your mom reads about match recaps, like that's a start. You gotta start doing something. You gotta kind of make it happen, because esports is still very, even though it's been around a long time, it's still a pretty nascent industry. It's still really new, right? So it's still very entrepreneurial, and I think that's sort of how I got into it, and would be the advice I would give anyone who wants to look at esports is no one's going to make it happen for you.
Yeah, nobody got a job by pressing their nose to the window and looking inwards.
So wait, quick follow-up question to that. How do I get my mom to read my match recap blog?
Well, you should be nicer to your
mom. I'm kidding. If my mom had any idea what Overwatch or anything was, she would be my biggest fan ever. I can still hear my mom hooting at my basketball games from 6th grade until present. Like,
well, my grandma just sent me a Christmas card that said "Go Overwatch." So, yeah,
that is the greatest thing I've ever heard. That's awesome. But speaking of Overwatch, I know you're probably the busiest person in the world right now. But do you get to play Overwatch at all? Like, do you get to actually sit down and play the game at all?
I play some Overwatch. I tend to play, so I come into the office pretty early. I like to get in around 7:30 or 8, and before anyone's there to start bothering me and making me make decisions and do things. And typically that's I like to start my day in a really positive way by playing some ranked competitive play. And having a positive mental attitude at all times.
That sounds like a Trevor May right there.
Super important. No, I like to. I would say I placed this season at 2100. So
nice.
That's not terrible.
That's right in my boat.
That feels average, right? I'm very happy to be average.
I was thinking it was a little better than average.
If you ever want to play with just like a really terrible aggro Reinhardt, I am your guy. I won't hold up the shield very much, but I will definitely swing the hammer.
W does your charge and your walk forward at the same time, like every time you press it.
Oh man, you're the guy that I'm telling my secret my Reinhardt strategy of: when you think you should charge, don't.
Yeah, that's typically what I tell people. If you want to be good at Reinhardt, just unbind charge. But it's so fun. There's nothing more fun than charging off the map with someone.
That is true.
I agree. I've played about 2 games of Reinhardt, so I feel like I can verify that statement. But I do want to shift the focus of the conversation here a little bit and talk about the origins of the league, Nate. Can you tell us how the idea, began? What was the first steps in forming it, and convincing people to let you start spending money and trying to make money, and where'd you guys get the beginnings here?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So started. One of the moments I think that really kicked off, or at least kicked me into high gear thinking about this, was this was back in 2015. 2015. Ended up having breakfast randomly one morning in Cologne, Germany with Jeff Kaplan. Because we were staying at this same hotel. We were both at Gamescom, and we just randomly were like the buffet together and sat down and started talking. And we started talking about esports, and we both I don't know if people know this. Jeff is a massive hockey fan, loves hockey, and actually quite a few, most of the people on Team 4, the Overwatch team, are huge sports fans. And so we were talking about sports, and we were talking about esports, and like, hey, why doesn't esports do more stuff like traditional sports? And we sort of just had this conversation, and it really got me thinking, like, hey, there's a real opportunity here to do something interesting with Overwatch. And so myself, along with a couple other guys on the team, started to whiteboard some things. We sort of came up with this idea of like the Overwatch Premier League, we were calling it for a while, which we can't actually call it that because of lawyers. So we came up with this concept, and the idea was like, hey, let's look at all of the things that work in traditional sports and see if any of that makes sense for esports. And so Overwatch League really kind of started as a strategy project, which was in my wheelhouse. That's sort of what I did my whole career, was to sit down and look at, we sort of did an audit of all of the traditional sports leagues around the world, not just NFL, NBA, MLB, but, we looked at, different sports leagues across Europe and Asia. And because every sports league does it a little bit different, right? In North America, they're all, sort of franchise leagues, but the structures are different, the way they handle revenue sharing, all of those things there's subtle differences. So we sort of looked across that and tried to see what makes the most sense for us. What do we think we can apply? And then we also looked at what others were doing in esports and what we've done in esports for nearly 20 years. And sort of, picked and choosed what we thought made the most sense from each of those different structures and kind of pulled together something that we thought really made sense for Overwatch. And it was a ton of hard work. I know I'm the one that gets to go on podcasts and talk about it, but there's really, over the course of the last few years to get to this point, there's literally hundreds and hundreds of people that have helped to make this happen. But we sort of had a core team that was putting together the strategy behind the Overwatch League, and what we wanted to do. And I think one of the reasons, one of the things, if I look back on the last couple of years, one of the things that I wish we could have done differently, not even necessarily wish we could have done differently, just wish that the circumstances were different, was sort of that big dead zone of time between when we announced at BlizzCon and when we announced the first 7 teams, where we didn't really say anything. And that was not because we didn't want to say anything. It was because we wanted to make sure that when we had something to say, it was going to be great and wasn't going to just create 100 more questions, though everything we say creates 100 more questions. So, but we, sort of leading up to that point, we spent a ton of time making sure that when we went out to try to sell the franchises and get the league kicked off, that we had done everything very professionally. And it turns out when you're going to go sit down with Bob Kraft and Stan Kroenke and try to get them to spend money on a sports franchise, you can't show up with a hope and a dream. You got to actually have your ducks in a row. And so we spent a ton of time, working on things like the league charter, team participation agreement, player agreement, like all of the policies, all of that stuff that lawyers get paid a lot of money to write. And that just takes time. It's not something that you can do overnight. And I think, having gone through that, we learned a lot. And I think what the product that everybody sees, quote unquote, on the field when we launch the league will be a result of all the time and energy that we spent leading to this point.
Yeah, going all the way back to that lunch meeting with Jeff. And I did have a quick follow-up about that meeting. It sounds like it was about the same time frame when I used to 1v1 Jeff on Kings Row all the time when Beta was down. Can you confirm that actually happened? Like, he was complaining about me beating him in that meeting, right?
I might have come up.
Okay. All right. So nobody can call me a liar ever again anymore. We have official word here.
It may have definitely, possibly, at least in a meme way, happened for sure.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, you guys pulled a lot of inspiration from the various sports leagues that were out there. Were there any in particular that were a bigger inspiration than others? Ones that you pulled more from than the rest?
I mean, I think you could say the basic structure of having a franchise that has a perpetual right to play in the league is a very North American sports concept. Like, it's not something that you see typically in European or Asian leagues, where they tend to have more open up and down relegation systems. So I'd say, from that perspective, we definitely borrowed a lot from the North American leagues. But I don't think there wasn't. I think we really, at the end of the day, drew up something that's very unique and very tailored, very specifically to games and for Overwatch, because at the end of the day, like, nobody owns basketball, but we happen to Overwatch. So there are a lot of structural differences between what we're doing and what traditional sports do.
For sure. Yeah. And I actually got this question today from a friend of the show, Mash from OverwatchScore.com, and he brought up this really interesting question. It's a little off kilter, but I wanted to throw it out to you. So he says, So imagine this scenario, Nate. It's a Tuesday night, and you're sitting at a dinner table with a mom and her two kids who are age 13 and 11.
Happens all the time.
The end. No. How do you convince her to bring her family to an Overwatch match that weekend?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
I gotta tell you, one of the things that anytime you're doing something like this, sorry, I'm breaking the table over. Anytime, the Overwatch League is obviously a really ambitious plan. It's something that's new and different. Anytime you're doing these things, you always are like, have those moments where like, is this going to work? Are we doing the right thing? And one of the things that I've seen over the last year that has told me that we're absolutely on the right track. I saw this at all the World Cup stops. I was down in Sydney, the one in Santa Monica, and even during contenders that we had in the Blizzard Arena, and then during preseason, was how many parents were there with their kids. Overwatch, I think, is a very unique game in that it has very broad appeal. There's it's a teen rated game, obviously, so there's tons of teenagers and young kids that play the game, and it's also, I think there's this moment culturally in this country where, like, my generation of dads plus 5 years is the first generation of dads that's never, and moms too, dads and moms that have never not had video games in their life, right? Like there's never been a moment that I can remember being alive on earth where video games was not a thing. And so I think it's actually it's going to become very normal that parents who are gamers want to share esports with their kids who are also gamers and want to share games with their kids. I mean, that's actually like, spoiler alert for my son, he's getting a Switch for Christmas. Ooh. I don't think he's watching, so he believes in Santa Claus, so if you meet him, make sure to hold the line on that. But like, it's kind of for me, like like I'm gonna crush him at Mario Kart. Like, just quick parenting advice for everybody. If you let your kid win, they're just gonna want, they're just gonna want everything. You have to crush them. It's okay. Like, so we'll play FIFA, and when it's already like 14-0, I'll let him score 1. Then you have to. It's really important. You got to do it. So back to the story. So it's really encouraging to me to see all these families come to content. I think what I would say to the mom about why she should bring her kids is, one, I believe that the best way to experience sports, any sport, and sports as well, is live. Like, I think there's something about going to a venue, being with other people that share the same passions as you, is like a special experience, and it really helps you get it. Like, I was never a soccer fan until I went to a Tottenham Hotspur game in London, and then I was like, oh, okay, I get it now. Like, this, I why people love this. And I think esports is the same way. Like, I think people who have never been to an esport event are like, what, you mean people play like video games and they get money? I think when you go and you watch it and you see fans screaming and thundersticks and the whole thing, you're like, oh, okay, now I get this now. So I think if you come to an Overwatch League game, you're going to get incredibly high production value. I think the arena, and by the way, you got gamed. If you're an Arsenal fan, I got nothing for you. Tottenham for life. So, like, you're gonna see high production value. The studio that we have, Blizzard Arena, is amazing. The stage is it does not do it justice on stream. Like, it is absolutely incredible. It's 13,000 pixels wide, I think is the number. Six separate 4K feeds to power it. Wow. It's really incredible. And so you're gonna come and you're gonna see incredibly high production value. You're going to see awesome matches, because I think one thing, and I'm sure we'll talk about this at some point, like, Overwatch League is super stacked. All the teams are good. Like, the matches are going to be super competitive. It's going to be very exciting. So you're going to see really high level gameplay. and you're going to have an opportunity to really engage with other fans and engage with the players in a way that you can't get at a traditional sports game. Like we had player signings at all the games during preseason. The players are super accessible. The overall fan experience, we have tons of cool stuff we're doing. Mm-hmm. There's raffles and giveaways and all kinds of cool stuff happening during the commercial breaks. The casters and all the talent are right there. You engage with those guys. And then in the lobby where the merchandise booth is and all that stuff is some place to hang out too. So I think overall it's like, where else can you go and for $20 or whatever it costs for a ticket, get 6 hours of awesome, wholesome family entertainment? No, it's honestly, the production value is awesome. The venue is really amazing. And I think it's a special thing to come and, share that experience with other Overwatch fans and esports fans. And that's the reason we love sports, right? It's to rally around a team and feel a part of a community and all of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up just the screen. One of the biggest moments, the things that stand out to me from the preseason the most was the first time that screen cut to the backdrop of the map that they were about to go on. I think it was Dorado. You could hear the breath be taken out of the arena. Everybody was just
sitting right there on the floor, and literally everyone went, ooh. Pretty awesome.
Now, we want to talk a little specifically here about season 1 and some of the logistics that you guys have defined and set up. And there's so much here, but hopefully we can hit on a couple of things that people are really curious about. The first thing I want to talk about is the mid-season signing window. Can you tell us when that will be open, how long it will be open, and maybe talk about why it's only open for a restricted time frame during the season?
So it opens at the end of stage 1, and then it is open until the end of stage 2. So it's like 5-6-ish weeks. One is at some point you have to lock a transfer window or a trade period. Like you have to let teams, there needs to be the general manager and the coaches and the folks pulling the team together at some point, that has to matter. And if they can always add new players and they can always make changes, it matters less, right? So at some point you got to lock your roster and you got to play with what you've signed. That said, we think it is important to have a window during the season where teams can make adjustments. It's season 1, right? So this is one of those things where there are literally hundreds of things around the Overwatch League that at some point you have to put a stake in the ground and say, this is what we're going to do. It doesn't mean we have to do it that way forever. We definitely listening to feedback from the community, from the teams. So I think, that's one of those things where if in season 3, the teams come to us and say, hey, we think the transfer window should be 2 weeks shorter or 3 weeks longer, we'll revisit at that time. But that's the period that we decided to go with. We think it's important to have a window, but we think after stage 2, once we're sort of halfway through the season, we need to lock rosters and we need to have that be what we play through until the championship.
This is why it's so nice that you're here and we can actually talk to you, because I don't have to read between the lines on what you said. I can just ask a follow-up question. It sounded like trades will be open during that time period as well. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So we're calling it a transfer window, but it's trades. And by the way, trades can be player for player, player for money, 2 players for 1 player, any permutation.
Excellent. And where can and can't teams pull players from during that mid-season acquisition period? We've got the academy teams, and there's so much path to pro information. I haven't been able to digest it all, but can you give us a little background on that?
Yeah, I mean, they can pull players from anywhere. There's obviously rules about team A can't go talk to team B's player behind team B's back kind of thing. It has to be between team management, things like that. But there are no restrictions on where they can sign players from.
Gotcha. So they could theoretically sign 2 players from a podcast, even if one of those players happened to be a 2100 level Moira player.
Is AKM one of your guys' co-hosts?
Well, if he wants to be.
Getting close to GM. I might make it someday.
Yeah.
I'm already wearing my Excelsior hat, so we know where I'm going. But can you give us a little bit of insight as to the thought process that went behind the dividing the season into stages?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So sort of two main reasons. So one reason is map pool. So one of the big pieces of feedback we heard from pro players prior to the start of the Overwatch League was when there were Overwatch tournaments that were happening that had too big of a map pool, it's a bit of a strain. It's you know, the old man sports analogy I give is you know, if the PGA Tour, if golfers showed up on Thursday and they didn't know what course they were going to play, but they had to be ready for 15 of them, that seems like an unreasonable ask. And so we wanted to limit the map pool, and stages allow us to do that, right? So we can have stage one, we're going to have 8 maps per pool. Teams only have to prepare for those maps, and we think that's going to result in a higher level of competition because teams will have time to develop those strats for those maps. The second reason is a little bit more future thinking, but you know, the goal here is that we are going to be home and away in the not too distant future. And when Shanghai plays London, it's played in either Shanghai or London. And what stages allow us to do is have sort of a different theme per stage. So it might be that in the future, when we have, you know, let's say we have 24 teams in the league or at some point, that, you know, stage 1 is you only play within your region. Maybe stage 2 is the Chinese teams come to the US, or like whatever it is, right? Like a lot of different things. But basically it's another mechanism that allows us to sort of try our best to minimize the back and forth international travel, which is going to be a reality of the league. As somebody who does that a lot, and very recently, in fact, like the sad part of my life this year is I hit for those travelers out there, I hit 1K on United and I hit gold on Delta, which is very sad. It makes me feel stupid for flying 2 airlines, but we want to try to minimize that as much as we can. And so the stage format allows us to do that.
Very, very interesting stuff indeed. Now, there's been a lot of discussion about the different rules imposed for Overwatch League players in regards to streaming and scrimming and the or not scrimming, but the pickup games
that aren't public that nobody actually knows.
Right, which is why I said there's a lot of discussion on, of course, everyone's favorite Reddit. Is there anything that you can say in regards to that, or?
No, you know, I think well, I will say, like, we are going to have, like, the rules of the Overwatch League will be made public, and those will be available on overwatchleague.com at some point in the near future. Things like the player participation agreement, which is what every player has to sign, streaming agreement, participation agreement, which is the contract we have with our teams, those are not going to be public documents. But I will say, on the streaming policy, we had a player summit, which we apparently weren't supposed to take photos of, and then I posted a photo of it on Twitter. But we at the player summit, we sort of, you know, presented things like that to the players, got feedback from the players, and what I will tell you is that in, you know, 5 days after the player summit, we already made quite a few changes based on feedback from the players. So again, like, we're not coming down from the top of the mountain and saying these are the rules. Like, we don't care what you think. Like, being very collaborative and building this league, and definitely value the feedback from our players, and have worked really hard to address all of their feedback. And I don't think, I mean, I don't think anyone's noticed any difference with the way that people stream. So I would tell people that they shouldn't worry about it.
Can we get an over under? I'll set it at 85 for how many questions Jake asked. Jake's,
you know, Jake and I are fellow San Diegans. Is that how you say it? San
Diego one? I have no idea.
Yeah. So no, Jake's great. It's awesome to have. I mean, we're all very lucky as Overwatch fans that we have player in the league that is was put on earth to be put in front of a camera. But Jake's a really smart guy. He's got great questions. He's I think he also really great relationship with all the other players in the league, and it's awesome to be able to work with guys like that.
I'm going to take that as an over.
For sure. Yeah, we had Jake on the show. Geez, I don't know, months ago. Back when actually it was the day that they got put up, or that the pairing against South Korea in the first round of the World Cup got announced, and he had some really good insights on that. So,
did you guys talk about how we froze the balls in the machine?
No,
I wasn't supposed to tell you we did that. Oh, okay.
Oops! We're leaking things after the fact. Does that count as leaks? I don't know. But moving right along.
By the way, that was. I think it's someday. I think we'll look back on that Korea USA game on Friday night at BlizzCon as kind of a seminal moment in the history of Overwatch esports. That was an awesome game.
We actually called it the best match in the history of competitive Overwatch, and we haven't said that about any. I mean, we've said it 3 times now, but I think we were right each time, and we haven't said it since then. So as of now, it's still staying.
It was also like one of the. I've been to a lot of really cool esports events, but that was also like the best crowd I've ever seen at an esport event. Like that the arena was insane on Friday night. Like it was so loud in there. That was just an awesome night. Yeah,
it was great. Hearing like 99
had not thrown an Eichenwald. I'm just trying to see if I can actually get Kiki to turn me off at some point.
It was great hearing 99% of the arena cheering for USA, and me having to sit next to bare hands, and him having multiple players on South Korea, like him rooting for South Korea. I'm like, no, please stop.
I will say, I actually kind of feel bad for Team Korea. Like they win so much at every esport. Like I think like fans in the room. They're like the nicest kid. Like honestly, they're like the nicest kids you will ever meet in your life. Like how can you be mad at? How can you boo Miro? Like it's actually not possible. You just don't have a heart.
So true. But real quickly, I wanted to touch on the preseason a little bit. We know it was streamed on MLG.TV. We didn't really see any viewership numbers from that. Can you give us an idea of what the viewership was like in terms of maybe what we're used to seeing for an Overwatch competitive event like that, or maybe compared to what your expectations were?
Yeah, I think preseason like is a dress rehearsal, right? Like that's what preseason's for. And so we thought it was a good opportunity because overwatchleague.com is a huge initiative for us. We one of the things back at the very early onset of designing the Overwatch League is we wanted to make it super easy to be a fan of the Overwatch League. Like we wanted to make sure that we had a website that had all the information you could ever want and need would be in one place, and you would know exactly where to go to get it. And we also think it's important that if you go to Overwatch League and there's an Overwatch League game happening, that you can just watch it right there and watch it in very high quality. So it was an opportunity for us over the course of the 4 days of the preseason to really test that out and get a bunch of traffic to go to overwatchleague.com, watch the matches there. And I think it was a pretty awesome experience. Like we had almost zero technical issues. There was actually one technical issue that no one really saw because it kind of happened after the stream.
I know exactly what was.
But overall, like we were incredibly happy with how that went. I think watching on overwatchleague.com was a good experience. Very minimal technical issues. And overall, we think the fact that we had that as the place to watch it, in addition to the MLG app, during Overwatch preseason, is really like making sure that the product that everyone gets when we start is going to be better for it. So for us, the focus was not on like getting a bunch of viewership around preseason, and you'll notice we didn't really promote it much. Like we had some social posts, but nothing major. And I think you guys will start to see here in the coming days the media blitz that is going to be around the launch of the league, and it's super exciting stuff. Like I'm really excited for fans to see all the marketing that we're going to be doing around the Overwatch League. So in terms of viewership, what I'll say is we were very pleased with the viewership. It was really solid all 4 days, very consistent, I think as we move into the launch, I think people can expect that we don't have any news that we can share exactly today on where you'll be able to watch the league, but we'll have I think pretty quickly in short order in the next couple of weeks. So I guess we have 8 business days until the start of the league. Not a lot, but at some point between now and those 8 business days, I think we'll have more news to share on where you can watch season 1.
All right, sounds good. Well, I can skip that next question then because you just answered it. So thanks for that. But I want to kind of shift gears a little bit here. And I want to talk about some of the player disciplinary actions, the things we've seen happen. It's something I think we all hoped wouldn't happen, but we all knew it was definitely going to happen at some point. We've seen one suspension already. We've seen Shanghai, self-imposed discipline on some of their players. We've seen the XQC incident where he gets banned from comp. Can you define at all the types of actions that are going to draw league-imposed punishments on the players?
Yeah, I mean, that was one of the big things we did at the Player Summit was walk players through our expectations. Look, I think we expect players to act like professionals. Like we're treating them like professionals. We did a ton of work to make sure that they have great ownership groups and that are going to pay them great salaries and treat them well. And our teams have like ridiculous team houses in LA. Like they're all being treated very professionally. So I don't think it's unreasonable for us to expect that in return. I think we definitely don't want people, I think things aside from obvious things like, don't drink and drive and don't kill anyone. Like stuff like boosting, for instance, like the Sato ruling, like that's something we view as you're impacting thousands of other people who play the game. That's not something that we want. Bad behavior in general, throwing, things like that. I think those are all things that we're going to keep an eye on. I would say in terms of punishment, I think there's like an escalating scale, and we look at everything on an individual basis. We are the thing that I think is the thing that's most important to me as commissioner is that we are fair. I think fairness is incredibly important. So every single time there's something that happens, a group of us sit down, we talk through it, all the implications, and sort of have this scale based on how what degree we think the offense is, and then how many times the player has had an offense or if they've been warned in the past. And it really starts with like a written warning from me. It's very scary. The next step after written warning is a fine, like an actual monetary fine, and then beyond that it's suspension. And suspension can be 1 game, it can be a season, it can be everything in between, and it really depends on the offense. So I would tell fans that we're actively monitoring all of these things. We're trying to be as proactive as we can, but we also are being very thoughtful about the way that we hand out discipline, making sure that it's really important for us that players have a path to redemption if somebody does something that's really wrong, like boosts a ton. The goal is not to ruin that person's life. The goal is to punish them for what they did, and then if they are able to rehabilitate, if they're able to become a productive member of the Overwatch community, then they have a path to be reinstated. So I think I'm really focused on fairness and making sure that we're dealing with each of these issues, addressing the problem, and trying to get guys to just act professionally. Like to me, it's one of those things like just don't be a jerk. Like there's no reason to be a jerk.
I loved your tweet about it. Before you went on, it was a skiing trip, I think it was before Thanksgiving. I loved your tweet about it. It's just like you don't have to act like a role model all the time, but you have to act like a professional, I think was basically the gist of it.
And I said something at the Player Summit I think is actually important for I think it's important for like even just fans to know, because I think Twitch chat is also content in a way, and I think people forget that sometimes.
True.
Like, so my son is like 7.5, and all his buddies are between 8 and 10, and basically every kid on Earth between the ages of 6 or 7 and 17, like all they do is watch and play video games, and like watching guys stream on Twitch, watching YouTube videos, like that is literally their favorite thing in the world to do. And when I said you don't have to be a role model, like we don't expect these guys to be teaching 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds how to grow up and what they should be doing, but you got to have in the back of your mind that like that is, those people are watching, and you got to think about what that means, and what they're taking away from that experience. And I think it's important for everybody in the community around esports to keep in mind that like this needs to be an open and inclusive community, and there's people different than you, and there's kids, and there's all these people that want to engage in this content, and I hope that we can everybody can sort of come together and make this an awesome place where everybody feels safe and good about being there.
I know you said the overwatchleague.com website is very important to you. I want to let you know quickly that it overtook NFL.com and my like most recently visited websites in Google Chrome. So making progress there. But there's one piece of that website that's particularly important to me as a fantasy player, as a huge stats nerd. The word stats is there, but it's grayed out. When is that going to have some beautiful color filled into it? When can I click that button?
We're working on that. So stats is, I think, super important. So we actually have, I think this is good for people to know. So Troutman works for us now, which is awesome. We also have, so actually during the preseason in the broadcast room, so it's like the whole team that's making the show happen, and literally in the same room as those guys is Troutman and a guy named Spencer who's on our team as well, and they're literally sitting there like curating all those cool stats that are going on the broadcast in real time. That is something that we want to continue to do and push as much as we can, and then obviously get to the point where we can have like real-time stats on the website. So if there's a game going on, you could actually load up overwatchleague.com and see real-time stats. That's what we want to get to. But we actually have a team, the 2 guys I mentioned, plus we have 4 other folks on the team. We have a group here at Blizzard called Global Insights, which is like the sort of big data business intelligence team. And we have a whole group that's just focused on Overwatch League, and helping to develop all the tools we need to give fans stats around the league. Because as a person who's a big baseball fan, growing up playing baseball, like what's baseball without stats? It's
nothing.
What's on the back of my Overwatch League baseball cards?
Well, I'll tell you, like one of the reasons it's grayed out, and one of the reasons, I think you got to stick with us here as we develop the league, because again, relatively new sport. We actually don't know exactly what is like home runs, batting average, RBIs for Overwatch. Like we're still doing the work to understand, like at the professional level, over the course of the Overwatch League, like what stats actually will be most correlated with victory, what stats will actually be the most meaningful. If you're a baseball fan, 15 years ago there was no such thing as WAR, but now WAR is actually one of the most meaningful stats in the game, wins above replacement, and it's actually a way to objectively say that like that shortstop is better than that right fielder. Those types of statistics take time. It takes a ton of data to ingest that and learn it and get better. But yeah, definitely don't worry about it being grayed out. It will definitely not be grayed out for long, and it's something that's a huge focus for us to make really awesome and really like supplement the viewing experience.
Just for the record, I will bribe you to be just CC'd on all those emails. Like I won't even reply or anything. I just would love to read them.
You got to get that secret BCC on there.
Right. No leaks.
Never leak.
Yeah, nothing has ever leaked once. That is guaranteed and for sure. So this question, I don't want you to take a million years on it because this could probably be its own episode. But what is in your wildest dreams, what does Overwatch League look like in 5 years to you?
Good question. So, sorry. I think the thing that I want to see, the dream to me is that there are 24, 28. There's a big number of cities around the world, major cities around the world that have Overwatch team, and that there are multiple opportunities in all these big cities around the world for fans to go and watch Overwatch. I think that to me is really what we're building is the opportunity for more fans around the world to engage with this content, engage with the community, engage with the fans, and do it live. And I mentioned this earlier, but going to an event being a really special experience. It's hard for a lot of people right now because they don't live in LA or Seoul or Shanghai or like the cities where that content is happening all the time. But if we can have cities, as we continue to expand and add more cities over the course of the next few years, really getting to that point where when during the Overwatch League regular season, there's an opportunity for fans all over the world. There's a city somewhat close to you, almost no matter where you live, that you can actually go and experience a match. That's really what we want to get to. And I think that is going to be really powerful when we do, because if you've ever gone to BlizzCon or if you've ever gone to a big event like that, it's awesome. Like it's a super special feeling to be there. It's awesome to meet all the other fans, spend time with them. And it's something we want everybody to be able to experience.
It would be great if you had a Buffalo team. I'm just putting it out there.
I was going to say, if you want to put a team in Antarctica to make sure you just hit literally all 7 continents, I will root for them, buy jerseys, do whatever we need to do to help you guys get as big as you could possibly grow.
Toronto's close to Buffalo, right?
Very close.
Very
That's
close.
Our realistic hope, but we will never stop bugging you about Buffalo until you put one here. So I'm going to set you up a little bit for the next question, but let's start with this. I probably shouldn't tell you that, but do you hope to see the Overwatch League have a players association or a players union in the future?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I think we didn't build, we don't think that's our responsibility to build that. We think it's up to the players. And so, I think if the players decide that that's a thing they want to do, we'll obviously be supportive of that.
Now, the reason that's a setup is because we were told by Ryan Morrison that is a requirement in order for something like a draft to happen. So would you be open to the idea, or do you think there's ever a chance that we will see Overwatch League have a draft for incoming players?
Yeah, I mean, we'd love to do a draft at some point. I think it's a cool idea. There's obviously some legal hurdles in order to making that happen, which is why we don't have one today. But it's definitely an idea that certainly makes a lot of sense to us, and think that something like that in the future could be a really cool way to sort of have the very clear end at the path to pro.
Excellent. Yeah, we actually fantasy drafted free agent players to build 2 more teams not too long ago, just because of how much fun the concept is and the idea of it.
You were doing an Overwatch League fantasy draft and you had first pick.
Who would I pick? I would personally probably just snap Linkser off. After seeing what I've seen from him recently, I think he's a very safe pick.
And the stat we talked about before we went live.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's got to count for points.
It's at least 3 points. I would have to pick Tavik. I have to go with my heart with the Plupster. I would just have to.
And that's why I'll be taking your money home in season 1 of that.
Yeah.
So now a quick follow-up on the draft here, and then I promise I'll drop it. A draft is a very powerful tool for a league. Okay, it helps promote parity and competitive fairness and balance within the league. So what can be done without a draft to help ensure those things? I mean, it's not impossible to do without one. So what do you guys plan on doing to help promote competitive fairness and parity?
Yeah, well, I think there's still rules around player selection process, and it's not a total free for all. There are rules around, there isn't like, it's not like the NFL where there's like a hard salary cap either, but there are things that we can do to help with competitive balance. And it's definitely something we'll keep our eye on. I think we're already seeing, like, I think the teams within the Overwatch League are actually pretty close. Like, I think if you there's tons of interviews already with guys. There's one I saw with Soon today, like talking about how from scrims, like how tight the matches are and who's beating who and all this stuff. So also, I don't, scrims is not necessarily an indicator of how things are going to play out in real life. But I do think, like, there will be sort of a, because there are so many people who play Overwatch, and then there's just 12 teams in the Overwatch League. Like, we kind of have this mechanism where the top players, there's going to be a desire to constantly get the top players, and we have between both the off-season signing window and then the in-season signing window, lots of opportunities for new players to get signed up to the league. So I think the level of competition is always going to be really high, and I think competitive balance is something we care a lot about, and we'll continue to keep our eye on, and will evolve as the league evolves.
Yeah, the only thing I have to say about that is that on High Noon Podcast, we do not accept scrim bucks as a form of payment. So, but shifting gears a little bit, in the future, will the Overwatch League merch and the team specific merch be handled at the league level, or will the teams be able to create like unique and specific to their brand stuff?
Yeah, so it's so building 12 new brands from scratch is a lot of work.
Wait, really?
And so with the time that we had, we're driving, the league's driving a lot of the merchandise early on, but I think you'll start to see that evolve over time. And the teams will start to do some of their stuff as well. I know you guys want to be able to buy player jerseys. That's coming in the future. Again, it turns out, like, I was surprised, but it turns out you can't just like call someone and be like, I need 1 million copies of this jersey tomorrow. Like, manufacturing takes time, I guess, and obviously doing things at a high quality takes time. So that's sort of what we have right now. There's a lot of additional merchandise that we're going to be adding over the course of the year. I think probably, I don't want to exactly commit to a date, but I think by the spring, I will say, April-ish, we'll have additional jerseys, additional hoodies. The teams actually, I don't know if you noticed, but all the players have like custom pants that they wear on stage with the team logo on it. There's actually going to be a jacket that goes with that as well. All of those will be available for sale for fans. We are going to have socks.
Yes, I was just gonna ask.
It will be owl socks. Did I say? Oh, I just said owl because it says owl right there. I shouldn't say that. Overwatch socks. And a lot of that will start to become available throughout the season, as sort of we finish the team branding process. And just this past fall, it takes a while to get all that stuff manufactured. So I think stay tuned. There will be more stuff to purchase, and it's all super awesome. And the goal is hopefully by the end of the year, we'll have the ability for you to go online and actually choose a player jersey. But we want to get to the point where you could even make a Death Blow jersey if you want, and put your own name on the back, and
10 out of 10 will buy.
Or something like that is the number.
Oh man, I'm going to buy a 34 Blevins NYXL jersey, and I'm also going to buy a Pluppy jersey. I don't care what anyone says. The OG. Okay, Death, we're getting right to the end. What do we want to wrap it up with?
Well, can we maybe hit you with a couple rapid fire questions? I know you guys just came out with the Path to Pro
lightning
stuff.
Round.
Yeah, we'll do a quick lightning round. So with the changes to the Open Division and the contenders coming, can we expect to see Open Division be broadcast in any capacity with Blizzard production?
I don't think in the near term, but it's something that we've talked a lot about it, but no plans currently to do that.
Clemens, you want to just alternate these ones?
Yeah. Okay. So, will the Overwatch League franchise academy teams have permanent spots in contenders?
Oh, good question. No is the answer.
Ooh.
Fuel's going down. Will the academy teams be required to have original branding, or are they going to be able to piggyback off the Overwatch League branding that's in existence now?
Also a good question. Still working through that one. Don't have an answer for you yet, but we'll have an answer soon.
Awesome. Okay. Will the first NA contenders trials be held to fill the 12th team spot, or will the teams be invited for season 1?
I believe the trials will fill the final spots for NA contenders.
Can orgs sell their contender spot similar to how we saw previously, like Liquid sold theirs? And does this apply to orgs with current bids but no players, like Miraculous Youngsters, Rogue, Gamers Origins?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay, awesome. And then the last one we have, and this probably isn't a rapid fire one, but feel free to answer it like that. Is there have there been any thoughts put into incorporating collegiate play and college players into the path to pro?
Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about it. I think something that's interesting about college esports. So, obviously in traditional sports, college is like the feeder system for pro.
Mm-hmm.
In esports, if you're in college and when you graduate when you're 22, you're really old. That's super sad, but apparently a lot of esport players are younger. That being said, I still think there's an opportunity to incorporate it better. I think we have the TESPA Collegiate Series. It's actually happening right now. That's going on. That's been really cool, and we want to see how we can make that even cooler. And if that's something that we can incorporate in the Path Pro, nothing to share at this time, and I don't know if it's something that we're gonna do right away, but it's something that we're actively talking about, and we definitely want to do. I also think what we want to do around collegiate esports is do more cool stuff on college campuses. It's something we've talked a lot about, and does it make more sense to have a Twitch stream or to actually do a big activation on a campus somewhere where there's tons of people that can go engage with that? I don't know the answer to that, but we're going to experiment with stuff like that in the future.
Awesome. Well, Nate, that's all we've got for you. Really appreciate it. The floor is yours. If there's anything you want to shout out or, throw out there, any leaks you want to give that we didn't ask?
Yeah. I'll just shout out to Twitch chat. Always awesome. And all the people, it seems like everyone is asking for a Nike deal. So I'll just show you. Oh, hold on. 3 stripes all the time over here. Gotta have fun with these guys.
They gave you so much flack for your soccer fandom.
Yeah,
you gotta give it back.
Weird. Tottenham's like the most exciting team in all of European football right now. How is that? Been a fan for a long time. No, yeah. Thanks you guys so much for having me on the show. Hopefully we can do it again sometime. Super fun hanging out with you guys. So I will go drink some more coffee now.
Yeah, you name the time. We'll be more than happy to clear whatever's in our schedule for you. And also we'll make sure we keep pestering you guys to come back whenever we want to talk to you too. So really appreciate you joining us. It was an absolute pleasure. A humbling experience for me. We know how busy you are. It's just great to get a chance to sit down with you and talk to you. And thank you for not only coming here, but like creating this league that we get to obsess about and talk about, and gives us a purpose to my video game habit instead of making me feel bad about it. Like I feel constructive about it sometimes.
Actually, I've been saying this to people, like it's if you're a fan of competitive Overwatch, like holy moly, guy, like we actually get to watch. Like I was sitting there during preseason, and like we actually get to watch like Pine, who I remember like the first crazy like Widow YouTube videos from Beta. Like, oh my God, look at this look at TF2 Pine doing this crazy stuff. Like, we actually get to watch that guy play every week in the Overwatch League now, and like all these players that we've never really got to see much of, like Fleta was a guy who I think a lot of us, at least I hadn't seen play a lot, and during preseason, it's like, oh my gosh, that guy is very scary. So like a lot of that, it's going to be amazing to watch these guys week in, week out, and super exciting. So hope everybody tunes in.
Yeah. And okay, I got one last one, and feel free to say no answer to it, but who wins week 1? Is it, you got to settle it for the podcast. Is it NYXL or is it Houston Outlaws?
Who wins?
Who wins in week 1?
The week 1 matchup.
NYXL, Houston Outlaws. Well, I have 12 favorite children. Never just pick one favorite. They're all my favorites. So
the PR answer.
Even though it's actually impossible and against the rules, I'm going to say they're going to tie.
Ooh, okay. So that was the couldn't you just say you couldn't answer? That was the worst answer. All right, we're deleting. Get out of here, Twitch chat. We're deleting the VOD. It never happened. You're getting them off. But
no ties in the Overwatch League.
We'll get somebody to like edit the audio to make it sound like you said Houston and New York separately, and we'll air 2 different interviews.
Like the
Simpsons. That's the only difference.
Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons. Okay, but seriously, Nate, we can't thank you enough from the bottom of our hearts. We're super thankful you got to come on. The invitation is always open. If you ever have something that you want to say to the couple hundred or 3 people that
a state of the league address, if you need somewhere to do that.
Cool, awesome guys, thanks, and have a great holiday.
You too.
You too. Christmas. All right, everybody, that's it. Thank you all for watching, and that's gonna be it. It's gonna be up soon, and I'm gonna let Nate go. But thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you guys after the holiday. Bye bye.